Here? Am I here? Am I running it? All right, buyer brokerage agreement in Georgia. What's really in the contract? If you are looking to buy a house, an agent will likely ask you to sign this before. Oh, am I going? All right, okay. If you're looking to buy a house, an agent will likely ask you to sign this before showing you any houses. So today we're going to take a good look at it. All right, let's dive in. And I'm going to try to do this on the fly as much as possible. But first of all, I need to go. Just hold on a second. I need to go picture in picture so you can see how cool I look. Or so you don't have to look at how cool I look or do not look. Alrighty, so I think we can close this out. Give me 1 second. I can't do all this. I haven't figured it out yet. It's my first time going live. This is the GAR form, Georgia Association of Realtors Exclusive Buyer Brokerage Engagement Agreement. All right, so we're gonna go in through it line by line as much as I can. I gotta remember that my head's down in the bottom of the screen. All right, state law prohibits broker from representing buyer as a client without first entering into a written agreement with buyer. So we can't represent, an agent can't represent you as an agent if you do not sign this. All right, exclusive buyer brokerage engagement agreement for and in consideration of the mutual promises contained herein and other good and valuable consideration, the undersigned buyer and undersigned broker do hereby enter into an exclusive buyer brokerage engagement agreement on the terms and conditions set forth herein. And it's going to be the term. Now we're on the term. The term of this agreement shall begin on the date of blank and shall continue through the date of blank. And the same may be extended by written agreement of the parties as provided herein. Now you can make this period as long as you want. It's 6 months, a year. You do have some. You have some say into what you want, how long you want to sign into this. Before I get much deeper, let me go over a few more things. At any time, you can cancel this. You just have to do it in writing. So if you don't like your agent for any reason, you just got to cancel this in writing. You can just send them an email or etc. Let's see, what else should we go over? I'm going to go through pretty detailed, but there's going to be definitely some things to leave off, and hopefully I'll at least get you. I want to make you aware of what your requirements are, what your agent's requirements are for you, and there are some liability aspects in here, and that what you should be expected for you to do for this as well. And hopefully, if you have any questions, you can ask your agent, an attorney, or myself if you have any questions. So I'm Alan. I work mainly in Atlanta to North Georgia area. And I'm a licensed agent and contractor. Oh yeah, I didn't do my intro. This is investing in Georgia. The Georgia-specific information about residential construction and real estate. I am a Georgia licensed general contractor and realtor, and my contact information is in the description below if you have any questions. All right, got that out of the way. Agency and brokerage. These are the only types. This could be a little confusing. These are the following types of agency not offered by the broker. So if you do not know what sub-agency, designated, or dual agency is, you shouldn't do that with an agent. You should only do buyer agency. So you want to X out all those. Unless you're looking for a rental, then you can do some other stuff for landlord agency as well. But if you're looking to purchase a house, you want to do buyer agency. Don't do designated dual or sub agency. I'm not going to get too in detail into that, but an agent doesn't have the same obligation to act in your best interest if you select one of those. Yeah, then there's the dual agency thing. I'm not even going to get into it. I don't recommend it. Compensation for professional services of broker compensation. Oh, compensation. Okay. Generally, compensation to brokers is negotiable and not set by law. Compensation to broker, buyer agrees to pay the broker in the compensation set forth in the value of the broker's professional services section below at the closing of the contract to purchase as the terms hereinafter defined. Right. Standardly do 3%. That's the kind of the market standard. You can also do like a payment as a fee or some other type of payment, as long as it's on there and it's fully disclosed and it goes through at the closing, as long as you have agreement on there. But yeah, so usually it's 3%. So you don't actually pay that. It's the seller is going to pay that on most circumstances. All right, possible payment of compensation by seller or seller's broker. The buyer directs or does not direct broker to get seller or seller's broker to pay a portion of the buyer's compensation above. All right, let's take a look. Buyer directs or does not direct broker to seek to get seller to pay. Yeah, basically it's do you want the seller to pay for your agent or not? And depending on, I'd say that's probably more advanced. I'd say you should check directs too. Unless you're more experienced, I would not recommend does not direct. Disclosure regarding broker's compensation. Buyer shall be obligated to pay all of the broker's compensation not paid by seller to seller's or seller's broker. So if for some reason that this will make up like a for sale by owner or investment deals, like off property kind of deals where they have more creative financing and terms involved with deals in general. That's not generally going to come up, but you can be liable if for any reason you fail to come through, or if it's not part of the agreement, that you could be liable when purchasing a house to pay for your agent. But standardly, you do not. Separate compensation on lease. We're not going to get into leases on this one. Protected period. The length of the protected period during which time a broker may be entitled to compensation under certain circumstances where this agreement has been unilaterally terminated by the buyer or has expired. All right, remember I said you can cancel the contract at any time, right? No problem with that. And as long as you do it in writing. What a protected period does and protects the agent from is people that would, for example, have an agent go. You say, for example, a buyer wanted to take an agent out to go show them a house. Then they see the house and they all of a sudden they want to buy it, but they decide they'd rather not use an agent or contact the the seller directly or use another agent. The protected period would protect the agent that originally showed them the house. It would make them payable for the commission. So if you have an agent go see you a house and then go show you a house and then you fire them, and within this a certain amount of days, if you go and like put a contract under that house, you can owe that person, the original agent, commission, and whoever else you would have before. Does that make sense? It keeps people from getting an agent to show them houses and firing them and then doing the deal themselves. Hopefully that was, but yeah, it's usually like 30 to 90 days, something like that. But you can bargain with that. Compensation on assignment. If buyer has a right to assign the purchase or sale agreement into during the term of his agreement of any protected period thereafter, or any protected period thereafter, buyer shall cause assignee to be fully responsible for paying the broker's compensation. If you do assignments, assignment would be if you sign it over to someone else and they don't close, for example, you would have to pay the commission. But if you're all new to this and you see assignment and you don't know what it is, you don't need to worry about that. You won't be assigning anything. Exclusive buyer brokerage engagement agreement. The buyer, let's do page 2. Let's see, what time am I at? Doesn't show. Okay. Buyer hereby agrees to hire broker to act as buyer's exclusive real estate broker on locating and, to the extent requested by buyer, negotiating the purchasing or exchange of real property on behalf of buyer, and filling out a pre-printed form contract for buyer's review and approval. So that's just all these contracts that, a lot of the verbiage is in there, and we just fill them out. The key things, which is what we're going over here today. Just wanted to show you what's in there, and this basically giving the agent rights to do that on your behalf. And it said, buyer is not a party to any current exclusive brokerage agreements. As we said, if you had any, as I already said before, they have expired or not been renewed. Buyer brokerage, that broker may have to pay a previous broker compensation, as I described before, if you have not done everything properly and you're in still that protected period. All right, let's go to term. The term of this agreement shall begin on the starting date, which is what was entered at the very first thing you wrote on there, and shall continue to the ending date, as the same may be extended upon the written agreement of the parties. So you can extend it just by little contract, and they'll have a form for that. If buyer is party to a contract to purchase, and that term is hereinafter defined, but the term expires prior to closing, the term of this agreement shall be automatically extended through the closing of the contract to purchase. Extension. If during the term of this agreement, buyer and prospective seller enter into a real estate purchase and sale agreement, option to purchase real estate property, agreement to exchange real estate property, or contract to purchase the shares, partnership, or membership interest in a legal entity owning real estate property, which is not consummated for any reason, then the original expiration date of this agreement may be extended for a number of days by the buyer that was under contract. And see if it basically the same thing. If you have under contract, you can extend it already. And if such written notice is not given before the end of notification period, which is it 5 days? I think it was. The extension of the period of the transaction will be deemed to have been waived by the broker. So the broker has like 5 days. If anything, all this stuff is very rarely going to happen. All right. or if it does, hopefully be able to handle it. Hopefully you'll be, if you're closing on the deal, hopefully you'll be happy with your agent at that point. Broker's policy on agency. Unless the broker has indicated elsewhere herein that broker is not offering a specific agency relationship, the types of agency relationships are broker are seller agency, buyer agency, designated agency, dual agency, sub agency, landlord agency, and tenant agency. I'm not going to get into any of those because if you are not familiar with, if you clicked on this video, you probably don't want to be representing yourself, and because you need to really understand what an agent does before you can act. You have to have more experience, I would say. Designated agency, we're not going to get into that. And also saying that you have no other relationships that might not reflect the best interests. Something like that. Compensation for professional services of broker. Buyer's compensation obligation. Boom. All right. I'm probably going to read this whole paragraph. Buyer shall be obligated to pay broker's compensation referenced herein at the closing of contract to purchase. In accordance with this agreement, buyer's compensation obligation shall exist even if the closing of the transaction occurs after the term of this agreement has expired. So he said a lot of this gets repetitive. Buyer shall additionally be responsible for paying the compensation if buyer defaults on this agreement. If the buyer enters into a contract to purchase during the protected period on certain properties as explained by the protected period section below and above. Like, it just stated the protection period above, and we're going to go into more detail below. Where am I at? Buyer agrees that any compensation to be paid to the buyer shall be shown in the settlement statement and collected by the closing attorney as a precondition to buyer closing on the purchase of real property, so long as the same is permitted by the buyer's mortgage lender. Because there are some lenders that have requirements on how payments can be made and who they can be made to. And that is my dog. He's walking around. He's here a lot. That's treats, everybody. Buyer and broker agree that the closing attorney may rely on this provision to collect and disperse any compensation to be paid by the buyer. Compensation in any real estate transaction is negotiable and paid by the parties in a paid by any of the parties in a real estate transaction. Everything's up for negotiation. Who gets paid, how everybody gets paid, and sometimes more the lenders will have some say in that as well. But other than that, everything's up for negotiation. There are times when the seller or seller's broker in real estate transaction may offer to pay for the buyer's compensation to a broker. Compensation on property sold for sale by owner. So a lot of for sale by owner people, they do it for sale because they don't want to pay commissions, and they'll have to have an agreement coming up ahead of time that the agent will get paid, that the buyer's agent will get paid, because to even go show the house, you have to have that in ahead of time. All right. Because if the agent isn't going to make money by showing you a house, they're not going to really want to show you the house. Separate compensation on lease. I'm not going to get into that. Protected period. The protected period shall be the period of time set forth in this agreement, commencing upon the expiration of the agreement. That would have been that would have been the expiration date of this agreement, or what would have been the expiration date of this agreement, had it not been unilaterally extended by the buyer, during which broker shall be protected for his compensation. So they're going to go into a lot of legal verbiage here, but yeah, if you, it stays on the same, I think I described it, maybe not oh so eloquently, but if you have any questions, ask them here, or my contact is in below if you have any quick questions. Buyer's duties to broker. So this is what broker's duties to buyer. Sorry, I read that wrong. So this is what you can expect from your broker. It's an agent, salesperson, as per this contract. Broker's sole duties to the buyer shall be to make all disclosures required by law, attempt to locate properties suitable for a buyer to purchase, comply with all local laws, and performance of its duties hereunder, including brokerage relationships in real estate transactions law, and to assist to the extent requested by the buyer in negotiating the terms of and filling out a pre-printed real estate purchase and sale agreement. So I think I hinted at this earlier. These are the GAR forms. These are forms put out by the Georgia Association of Realtors. This is what they come up with. This is their standard forms. And they have pre-printed for all different kinds of, there's like hundreds of them. See, this is what they call the F110 exclusive buyer brokerage. I think it's the F101 for the seller listing. And but yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. All right, the buyer's duties. What does the buyer agree to? Be reasonably available to see property with broker or property for which broker has arranged buyer to see. They need to be available to see things. Respond timely to communications. Provide broker with accurate and complete information. Inspect and become familiar with any property that the buyer contracts to purchase, including but not limited to potentially adverse conditions and conditions of specific concern to the buyer relating to physical condition. Basically, you need to do your research on the house as well too. You need to do your due diligence. Your agent should help you through what due diligence you should be doing, but it's also up to you. So yeah, including any improvements located thereon and the neighborhood surrounding such property. Carefully read the terms of disclosures, reports, and contracts to purchase, and comply with the duties and deadlines contained therein. I want to make this a series going through all the contracts. I already have the one for the seller's one, the seller's listing one. And if you want to follow here, you will learn about these contracts. Work exclusively with broker and not with other real estate broker licensees in identifying, previewing, and seeing property for purchase by buyer, since if buyer identifies, previews, or sees property with another broker or fails to disclose the seller's broker that buyer is working with another with a broker, the compensation referenced herein will likely not be paid to broker by the seller's broker, and the buyer shall be responsible for the same. A confusing way of saying if you work that protected period, if you're working with two agents, you can get into trouble with that one. But yeah, you can pick your agent however you feel comfortable with. I guess you got the personal aspects that you want to look for. How much, I guess you're looking for it's really your first time, you want to work with someone that's really comfortable with explaining the things that a lot of agents might think are self-explanatory. And there's some agents that focus more on, they say, houses that need renovation, like myself. I have a construction and renovation background, and you just want someone that works with your personalities and you can get along with, and someone that you trust, obviously. That's my little tips in there. Where did I go here? Disclose to broker at the commencement of this agreement whether buyer previously worked with another real estate broker and addresses of the property. So to protect yourself from all those issues, just tell your agent who you were with and what you saw. It says not contact or see a properly listed for sale by owner without first giving the broker a reasonable opportunity to contact the owner thereof and attempt to enter into agreement. Because if you go and start contacting for sale by owners and they don't have a contract signed up front about payment for the commission and all that, it can be tricky. If you want your agent to represent you, then the seller isn't going to want to pay. Then you're going to become extra money out of pocket because you already agreed to pay and all this type of stuff. So it's just going to get messy. Buyer's authority and responsibility. Buyer acknowledges and agrees that broker may show properties in which the buyer is interested or has made an offer or counteroffer on to other prospective buyers. So there is a potential that one agent will have two buyers, they're putting offers in on the same property. You should just ask your agent for that if they have any information on that. And I guess just go how you feel comfortable or they feel comfortable with that. All right. The broker shall have no duty to inspect the property or advise real estate agents, and it goes into the detail of all the things that they shouldn't be. They're not asbestos inspectors, they're not mold inspectors, they're not home inspectors, or you're not mortgage consultants, or not all that type of stuff. You need to do all that stuff separately. You can't expect an agent to do that, because that falls outside of the scope of real estate brokerages and services. They should be knowledgeable about that stuff, but you cannot expect them to be certified and all that type of stuff. They should more be able to point you in the right direction. Shall owe no duties to the buyer, have no authority on behalf of the buyer other than what is set forth in the agreement. In other words, there's no authority specifically put in here, you don't have it, the agent doesn't have it, and the agent can't sign for you for anything, they can't make decisions for you. The broker shall not be responsible for ensuring the buyer complies with duties and deadlines for any purchase agreement. They should be able to tell you what all is required, but they can't actually make sure you do it. Also shall be held harmless by buyer if any of the termination agreement from any claims caused by action damages from arising to inaccurate or incomplete information provided by the buyer to the broker. So you can't expect the agent to be responsible for that. Earnest money handled by someone other than the broker. So if you make your earnest money payment, if you hand it to the broker and then they go out and steal it, then they would be reliable. But if you send it straight to the attorney and all that, there's no recourse against your agent. Any injury to persons and loss or damage to the property, if you get hurt, it's not their fault. buyer's negligence or intentional wrongdoing. So if you don't do your proper research or you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing, it's not your agent's fault. Agent shall have no authority to bind a buyer into a contract. As I said before, they can't actually sign for you. Limits on broker's liability. Buyer acknowledges that broker shall under no circumstances have liability greater than the amount of compensation paid to broker. So for the agent can't be responsible for anything more than what they get paid. Broker shall have no liability for providing information that later turns out to be incorrect, false, provided that the broker did not have actual knowledge and that the information was false and discloses to the buyer the source of information. So yeah, a lot of how you determine like facts, you just phrase it should be phrased as where you got this information from. You say according to this, you can do this, for example. And according to this, this is true. But as far as say for the agent to be saying specific things of knowledge about the house without citing the reference brings into question of where they got. You can say according to the seller, etc. So, notwithstanding the above, shall have no liability in excess than $100 for loss of funds as a result of wire and cyber fraud. It's going to come up again later. Wire fraudsters are really good at what they do. Especially it's going to come up with your due diligence checks and down payments and all that. But we'll get into that a little bit more later. The limitation of liability shall survive the termination of this agreement. Disclosures. Alright. So we are over halfway done, guys. How about that? You like some positives? We got about 2.5 pages left. After we finish this one, we got 2.5 pages. I'm back. There, oh my gosh. I am sorry. Burn. I'll have to edit all that out, of course. How does this look? Am I looking good? Okay, I am back. Everything closed down. Technical difficulties. First time live, so I will edit this, of course. I apologize. Alright, so where were we at? I was just... Hopefully I didn't lose too much. Alright. I was saying how close we were. Disclosures. Whew. Broker agrees to keep confidential all information which buyer is told to keep confidential by express request or instruction unless the buyer permits such disclosure. So if you bring it up to someone else in the transaction, then they don't have to keep it private anymore. Seller may not treat any offer made by the buyer as confidential unless parties have entered into a confidential agreement with the buyer. So if you tell the seller something, they don't have a confidentiality agreement with you. Broker may not knowingly give false information. In the event of conflict between broker's duty not to give false information and the duty to keep confidence of the buyer, the duty to not give false information shall prevail. So you have to not lie, first of all. The agent has to not lie. Unless specified below, the broker has no known agency relationships that would affect anyone's interests. Disclosures of potential fraudulent activities. Your agent is going to have to tattle on you if they think there is any fraud. That's a summary of all that. I'm saying in the buyer acknowledges that the broker does not have any special expertise with respect to detecting fraud in real estate transactions. Therefore, buyer acknowledges that activities which are fraudulent or illegal may be undetected by broker, and activities that are lawful and routine may be reported as being suspicious. Arbitration. Page. If anything, if you agree to go to arbitration to prevent any major lawsuits, etc. That's what that whole paragraph is about. Assignability as part of the sale of the substance of all or substantially all of the assets of broker to another firm. Oh, I didn't make this bigger. Oh, and I didn't make it full screen for you. I apologize, people. Hey, it's my first time live. If something happens to your agent and or the brokerage itself, and whatever rights they had can be transferred to someone else. Attorney's fees in the event of agreement. In the event this agreement or any provision therein is enforced through or is subject to dispute resulting in litigation or arbitration, the prevailing party shall be entitled to recover actual attorney's fees reasonably incurred. Broker. In this agreement, the term broker shall mean the licensed Georgia real estate attorney or a real estate agent or a broker. So the way real estate just salespeople or agents, and they also have brokers on some. All brokers are agents, but not all agents are brokers. So brokers are kind of the next level up. An agent has to have supervision of a broker, but that's kind of separate from the definition in here, because technically contracts we write are through our broker with you, and you just have we're the front person. That I know it's a little confusing. That's why I'll say, for the sake of this contract, I'm a broker, but I am not a real estate broker. Buyer buying property sight unseen. You need to see your house unless you're very experienced. Which I don't even advise that anyways, but you need to pictures and all that don't cut it. But you should actually go see the house. See the things they have to put in contracts, Definition of buyer and seller. Obviously, you know what the buyer and seller is. Oh, actually, there is some nuance to this one. I forgot about this one. The buyer shall include the buyer, all members of the buyer's immediate family, and any legal entity in which the buyer or any member of buyer's immediate family owns or controls, directly or indirectly, more than 10% of the share or interest therein, and any third party who is acting under the direction or control of any of the above parties. So if you have someone do something for yourself, they can say that they're acting for you or on your behalf, which can get you in trouble. Disclaimer regarding the purchase of certain property. This is if you're within doing a military base and foreign people near a military base. It's pretty rare, obviously. The entire agreement. This agreement represents the entire agreement of the parties. No representation, promise, or inducement not included in this agreement shall be binding upon any party hereto. So if there's anything not included in this document, so when you say this document, so there might be some other things attached, but yeah, it should all be attached at this point. There will be some other things we'll go over, but this will be one document. Even though there's other documents involved, there'll be other like exhibits, etc. About. We'll go into that in a little bit, but it'll all be considered one document. Fair housing disclosure. All right, I'm going to go ahead and read this one because this is kind of a big deal in real estate agency things. Let's go up. Buyer acknowledges that broker is committed to providing equal housing opportunities to all persons. While broker may show buyers properties of a type or in any specific geographical area requested by buyer, broker may not steer buyers to or away from particular areas based upon race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity, and may not answer questions based on demographics of different neighborhoods. GAR forms. This is basically like the Georgia Realtors, kind of their CYA on their forms. But yeah, the fair housing is a big deal in real estate. So like it's even like talking about demographics and all that stuff is kind of not good. So because there used to be major issues with that, especially. I'm sure they still go on, but if you want to research some interesting things about the discrimination that used to happen, which caused those laws to come up, it very much shaped a lot of cities, actually. Like why we have good areas and bad areas, etc. And I went all the way up from agents all the way up to the mortgage companies and all that. I think the mortgage companies were primarily doing, or a big part of that at least. We can always blame the banks. It's fun, right? Governing law interpretation. Basically, it's the state of Georgia's laws. Hazardous conditions on the property viewed by the buyer. Yeah, the houses can have dangerous things in them, especially if they need some work. So it's basically that there's no need to be aware of that. Hold harmless. Buyer agrees to hold all brokers harmless from all claims, injuries, and damages related to the physical examination of any property viewed by the buyer and buyer's family members and representatives. If anything happens, it's not the agent's fault. Independent contractor. Your agent is an independent contractor. No imputed knowledge. I think I said, and I'm still not exactly sure. Let me try it. I understood this properly or explained it properly in the seller listing. But let's dive through it again. So, by definition, no imputed knowledge. I had to research this one to make sure I was clear. No imputed knowledge means like no indirect knowledge. You have to be directly knowledgeable. If you have no imputed knowledge, you have no direct knowledge. So like no implied knowledge, etc. So let's read through this and see if we can flush it out a little bit better. Buyer acknowledges and agrees that with regard to any property in which buyer develops an interest, there shall be no knowledge imputed between broker and broker's licensees or between the different licenses of the broker. Broker and each of the broker's licensees shall be deemed to have the only actual knowledge shall be deemed to have only actual knowledge of such properties. So I think it gets back to where if you're you can how you speak on fact and how you negotiate, how you explain where the information came from. I would appreciate an attorney, maybe splicing that one out, or a broker. Tell us in the description. Notices between buyer and broker. So it's got to be. You can use any means necessary. I don't need to go there. But communications regarding to real estate transactions. Buyer acknowledges that many communications and notices in real estate are of time-sensitive nature, and that failure to be available to receive such notices and communications shall have adverse legal, business, and financial consequences. During this term of agreement, buyer agrees to remain reasonably available for or to receive communications from broker. You have to be available. Yeah, a lot of things come up fast. Notices between buyer and broker regarding this agreement. Buyer and broker agree that communications and notices between them regarding the terms of this agreement shall be in writing. Let's try to put as much in writing. Signed by the party giving notice, and be delivered in person to any address, email address, or fax number to the person from communication, specifically set forth in this agreement. It'll come up later in the contact information sheet, which is the last page, which we're a promise we're getting close to, is how they're going to be in touch with you. We're getting there, people, we're getting there. Does it have a for example? For example, if a party has not provided an email address in this agreement, it shall mean that the party is not accepting notices and communications by this means. Referrals. Should buyer, so say if you, just give you a hypothetical. So if you're buying a house, if your agent happens to also know someone in the place where you are moving from, or has any other, like if you have that refers you to a moving company or another agent or anything like that, that agent can get referral money for that. And buyer acknowledges and agrees that buyer may receive valuable consideration for the referral. All right. Statute of limitations, everything's pretty much for 1 year. Actually, let me read this to be sure. All claims of any nature whatsoever against broker and their affiliated licensees, whether asserted in litigation or arbitration, and sounding in breach of contract and or tort, must be brought within 1 year from the date of any claim or cause of action arises within survival. The rights and obligations of broker to the compensation and the expiration of the agreement as set there within, and limitations of liability. The obligation to arbitrate and indemnify broker for similar provisions that their realtors are meant to protect broker shall survive termination of the agreements. Even if you do hold on. Even if you cancel, those things, anything can still be done up to a year. Third-party vendors, especially if you recommend someone, etc. If an agent recommends someone, it's not the agent doing that. So any issues or problems would be up with them. Time is of the essence in this agreement. You notice that's another repeating one. This one, use of initials NA or N-A in filling out a blank on this agreement shall mean not applicable. So if your name is Neil Armstrong, I guess you might have an issue with that. Buyer default. Notwithstanding any provision to the contrary here within, buyer agrees to immediately pay broker. Oh no. Hold on, guys. I'm sorry. My dog really doesn't like. I thought I had that off. He's gonna start howling. It's all right, puppy. It's all right. It's all right. He really doesn't like when my alarm goes off for too long. Isn't that cute? Isn't that cute? Isn't that cute? All right. Good boy. It's all right. He doesn't like noises. He's right underneath my feet. He's not a puppy. All right. So sorry about that. Notwithstanding any provision may occur, buyer agrees to immediately pay broker its compensation in the event of any of the following occur. So this is more some potential risk to the buyer. I think you're gonna be a lot of repetition here. Buyer defaults on a contract to purchase real estate under which broker would have been paid its compensation had the transaction closed. B. Buyer agrees with the seller to mutually terminate a contract to purchase under which broker would have been paid its compensation had the transaction closed without the prior consent of the broker, except if such mutual termination is entered into during due diligence in the period or other period during which the buyer may terminate the contract to purchase for no reason. Buyer unilaterally terminates this agreement and then enters into a contract to purchase property, lease purchase, or a lease with an option to purchase a property as applicable, either during or they have been the remaining of the term of this agreement, and the agreement had not been unilaterally terminated, or during the protected period as provided by the protected period section of this agreement. Or buyer enters into a contract to purchase during the term of this agreement and later closes on the same, even if the same where the broker is not paid his entire commission, even if the closing is after the expiration of this agreement. Whew. Is there any questions about that? I think pretty much everything was repeated. Warning to buyers and cyber fraud. Yeah, that's good. So you're gonna especially want to be when you send your due diligence, your deposit. Try to send, just double check all the numbers, all the forms, and call the actual attorney if you put it with, or the broker. Send them a check would be ideal, but if you got to do wire. And also when you do your money towards the closing, if you put money down, just double check everything. I'm not going to get into all the details, but you want to be on top of that. Warning to buyers regarding identity theft, indemnification, and covenant not to sue. Buyer acknowledges that there's an increasing amount of identity theft involving persons impersonating buyers of property and attempting to sell property they do not own. So this is particularly a case in the sale of lots and vacant properties. Buyers should take extra precautions to verify the identity of the seller. I'm not going to get into all the detail on that. We'll have some info on the due diligence of that. There's many checks you want to follow up on. Brochures. Here are some examples of the things. The ABCs of agency, lead base, paint, pamphlet, in case you're looking to buy a house, the mold, whatever you're interested in. The agent will check these if they supplied them to you. What to consider when buying a real property in an HOA. Say all HOAs are different, and additionally, there's like two different main categories of HOA, depending on their level of their power. And I don't I don't have much experience with condos, etc. Admittedly. Protect yourself, flood, agricultural. Oh, this is a thing on the agricultural land near military bases. Or if they have a retainer fee for an agent. Ew. All right. I think we're like pretty much done. Special stipulations. Following the special stipulations, anything that might come up. Um, anything specific that might be different that you want to write in here, and you got additional stipulations. By signing this agreement, buyer acknowledges that the buyer has read all the provisions and disclosures, which you have, right? Buyer understands that all such provisions and disclosures and has entered into this agreement voluntarily, and buyer is not subject to a current buyer brokerage engagement agreement with any other broker. If the licensee is signing this agreement on behalf of both broker, licensee warrants that licensee has full authority to sign this agreement and bind broker offer and bind broker here too. I think we're just on signing now. So you got the buyer signature, 1 or 2. If there's more, there's another form for that. I told you there's a lot of pre-written forms. And this is the broker. This is your broker. And retain a copy of this agreement. It's hereby acknowledged by and a buyer and a group. They just call this ratified, at least in the contract wise. I don't know if it does here, but this is like when everyone signs, the last person to sign. I made it. You're probably, got some edits obviously because I got the issue of my computer crashed for a few minutes. But so if there's anything I got wrong, please correct me as needed. I don't have my phone connected back up yet, so I'm gonna be staying in my little square for right now. Hope you learned something. If you did, please like, comment, share, or subscribe. If you have any questions about Georgia real estate or construction, my contact information is in the description below. This is Investing in Georgia. I'm Alan. Thank you. All right, now I've got to close this thing out. That was a train wreck, wasn't it?